news from ITN.
Kinnock tells Lamont, don't waste the brass on tax cuts. Army on the streets as Algeria cancels election. Scuffles at Moscow's biggest anti-Yeltsin rally. And the old flame who flickers in Des's heart. Good evening. Government sources have indicated that a cut in the standard rate of income tax in the budget is looking unlikely. Our political staff say improved tax allowances are a more likely option. The Labour leader Neil Kinnock today accused the Conservatives of preparing a Save Our Skins budget. He told a rally in York that the Chancellor, Norman Lamont, should forget about trying to buy an election victory.
Neil Kinnock, riding high on a 5% lead in the polls, today launched an offensive on the issue likely to decide the next election, the economy. He told 1,000 cheering supporters the government was preparing a Save Our Skins budget, and he had this advice for Mr. Lamont.
Forget about trying to buy the election for the price of a penny tax cut. Just clear your minds of that option. Forget about it. Forget about it because the British people don't want a Tory Save Our Skins budget. They want a Save Our Country budget.
For Neil Kinnock, where there's brass, there's a photo opportunity. But the upbeat mood is real enough, in particular because the polls say voters agree with him that public spending is more important than tax cuts. But ministers say privately that yesterday's meeting of the Treasury team at Chevening ruled out any budget giveaway. Even a penny tax cut looks unlikely. A lift in income tax allowances is a better bet. Other budget options under discussion include lifting the level at which inheritance tax starts, currently it's £140,000, and scrapping the car tax of 10% to help the beleaguered car industry. But as Norman Lamont left the talks, the message was of no giveaways, of a budget which above all would be responsible, because ministers still believe voters trust them rather than Labour to run the economy.
Central issue. At long last, we've arrived at it after so many other issues have been in the headlines over the last few months. I'm quite convinced myself that the more people look at the economic policies of the two parties, the more they will conclude that Labour's tax and spend policies are totally irrelevant to the economic health of Britain.
Meanwhile, Paddy Ashdown, drawing up election plans with his party today, repeated that he would not support a minority government without reform of the voting system, and added this election was more wide open than any for half a century. So the prospect for Conservative MPs returning to the House of Commons is a gloomy one. There seems little chance either of speedy economic recovery or of a giveaway budget. Ministers will therefore be concentrating their fire on what they see as Labour's failings. Peter Allen, ITN, Westminster.
Police in Belfast continued their offensive against the IRA tonight with the discovery of bomb-making ingredients in a building belonging to the Roman Catholic Church. The cache was found under the floorboards of a hall next to a monastery in the Republican Falls Road area. Earlier today, security forces seized £1,500 of homemade explosives and arrested 3 men.
This was the third find to be made by the security forces this weekend. This time, bags of fertilizer, an essential ingredient in homemade bombs, were found under the floorboards of a parochial hall in West Belfast. The hall is attached to Clonard Monastery, and clergy there were quick to disassociate themselves from those who concealed the materials.
No member of the Clonard Monastery community has any knowledge of how, when, or by whom the material was placed there. We're grateful that the material cannot now be used to destroy life or property.
Earlier, the RUC put on show £1,500 of bomb-making materials discovered in a house off the Falls Road. 3 men were arrested. Senior RUC officers say it was to be used in 3 or 4 van bombs in the city centre tomorrow or Tuesday.
Here we have again £1,500 of homemade explosives, enough to bring death, destruction and devastation to the centre of Belfast.
Last week's devastation in Belfast was caused by 2 bombs weighing less than what was found today. 6 attacks in as many weeks have led to higher profile policing and a stepping up of the search for IRA arms and explosives. Ray Hayden, ITN, Belfast.
The army and government in Algeria have announced in the past half an hour that they're cancelling the country's first free democratic elections. Islamic fundamentalists had been heading for a sweeping victory after gaining a clear lead in the first round of voting. But the country moved into crisis with the sudden resignation of President Chedli Benjedid. John Draper at ITN has been following the day's developments.
Algerian troops have been keeping a heavy presence on the streets of the capital, Algiers, all day. There's been no official declaration of martial law, although tanks have been taking up positions outside government buildings. The authorities appear to want to discourage any thought of street protests by Muslim fundamentalists, angry at their election victory last month being snatched away from them.
For the most part, it's fairly calm. There are troops and security forces around key buildings such as the Foreign Affairs Department, the Presidential Palace, the television station and the Constitutional Council. But the rest of Algiers is basically carrying on much as normal. However, in some of the suburbs where the Islamic supporters are congregated, many of them are out on the streets. They're very angry at what's going on.
The new caretaker president, Abdul Malik Ben Habiles, appealed for calm on television. Western diplomats believe he's on the brink of declaring a state of siege. His predecessor, President Chedli, resigned live on television, his departure seen as the price the military exacted for stopping the Islamic Party taking power. He left, bringing to an end 30 years of rule by the National Liberation Front. The party had taken Algeria to independence in 1962 after a bloody and protracted revolution to oust the French. The National Liberation Front ruled unelected and unchallenged until 1988, when serious rioting broke out over price rises and unemployment. President Chedli announced reforms, and last month the first democratic elections were held, which gave a landslide victory to the Muslim fundamentalists. Today, the non-Muslim opposition condemned the military authorities for overturning the election results. But the Algerian ambassador to London says the government avoided a bloodbath which might have displaced thousands of people all over Europe.
If there is a civil war, sometimes somebody have to restore the order. And now we prevented this disorder, who is really, the Algerian people suffered a lot and doesn't need any more trouble.
The Islamic Party, the FIS, had earlier today warned against any attempt to cancel the final round of the elections. Tonight's declaration announcing exactly that is bound to add to the tension. As security forces prepare for their second night on the streets, the possibility of a state of siege is coming closer. Algerians who've witnessed martial law in the recent past will be waiting anxiously to see how the Muslim fundamentalists respond.
Russia and Ukraine have settled their row for the moment over who should control the former Soviet Black Sea Fleet. They've agreed to share control while a commission decides the best way for it to be divided up. In Moscow, thousands of people have held one of the biggest demonstrations ever against President Yeltsin. They're angry at rising prices and growing food shortages.
Staged in the shadow of the Kremlin, a mass protest demanding a return to what some Russians still see as the good old days of hardline communism. The flags and the faces that have been noticeably absent from Moscow's streets since the abortive coup on display again. The principles of Lenin and Stalin applauded. Russia's new president, Boris Yeltsin, depicted as a womanizing drunk. He's destroying the economy and exposing us to the evils of capitalism, a succession of speakers told the crowd of several thousand mostly elderly Muscovites, who also heard calls for the military to intervene. An army officer said the new leadership was trying to divide the armed forces and should be stopped. The crowd chanted for a return to the old Soviet Union. The demonstration was watched by hundreds of police officers. There was no attempt to silence the protest, although coachloads of policemen were strategically parked, denying the hardliners access to Red Square. There was a brief scuffle when the crowd turned on a man who tried to unfurl an anti-communist banner. He was dragged away by security men. They said it was for his own safety. The anti-Yeltsin demonstration continued without further incident.
Staged in the heart of Moscow, this has been the largest show of dissatisfaction with Boris Yeltsin and his government. Its communist organizers predict a winter of mass protests as the Russian people become increasingly disenchanted with Yeltsin's attempts to reform the economy. Paul Davis, ITN, Moscow.
The former Beirut hostage Jackie Mann has been airlifted to a military hospital in Cyprus after being taken ill with pneumonia and pleurisy. He was flown from Nicosia to the RAF base at Akrotiri. Mr. Mann, who's 77 years old, was released last September after 28 months in captivity. His wife Sunny said tonight she was confident her husband would make a full recovery. A man is being interviewed by murder squad detectives tonight after the body of a 10-year-old girl was discovered in a Wiltshire beauty spot. The girl was last seen in a pub in Swindon yesterday afternoon. Her body was found this afternoon at the Coat Water Country Park by a man walking his dog. The girl's mother had reported her missing less than 3 hours earlier. Soccer, Leeds United are back at the top of the First Division tonight after thrashing Sheffield Wednesday 6-1. Lee Chapman scored a hat-trick. Leeds are now 1 point clear of Manchester United at the top of the table, although they've played 2 more games.
Leeds couldn't have given a better reply to those who thought their championship hopes were fading. Lee Chapman opened the account after only 8 minutes with the simplest of chances. Sheffield Wednesday was simply outclassed by a United side without key midfielders Gordon Strachan and David Batty. England defender Tony Dorigo scored their second with a 25-yard free kick. One-way traffic was reversed momentarily when Wednesday were awarded a dubious penalty. Gordon Watson appearing to dive after a challenge from Chris Fairclough. John Sheridan's spot kick was pushed against the post by Lukic, but the Republic of Ireland international followed up to put the loose ball in the net. Leeds soon returned to the attack, Chapman heading home just minutes later. After the break, the rout continued. Chapman completed his hat-trick with a simple header. Mike Whitlow headed a fifth 3 minutes later. And Wednesday's humiliation was complete when Rod Wallace grabbed a well-deserved goal 4 minutes from time.
News just in, there's been another big arms find in Northern Ireland tonight, this time in County Antrim. Rifles, handguns and submachine guns were found along with ammunition and bomb-making equipment in Ballymoney. A 2-year-old whippet called Dutch became top dog at Crufts in Birmingham today, taking the title of Supreme Champion ahead of 20,000 other hopefuls. The winner's full name is Penclow Dutch Gold. He fought off tough competition from finalists including a standard poodle, an American Cocker Spaniel, a pug and a Skye Terrier. Dutch's owner from Ayrshire said afterwards that he was the dog of a lifetime. The racehorse Desert Orchid officially retired today, but his owner pledged he wouldn't be put out to grass just yet. She hopes Desi, as he's known to his fans, will have a successful second career making public appearances at horse shows.
Today, Desert Orchid returned to the stables where it all started, the stud farm in Leicestershire where he began his career and where he now begins his retirement. But he will be kept busy. This was the first of his post-racing public appearances, and he was hotly pursued by photographers. There was another distraction, an old flame, a filly described as a former girlfriend of Desi's. But try as they might, the cameraman could not get the two of them to pose nestling together. It's Desi's wayward temperament which might just hold him back in his new public relations career. Could he be trusted to open a supermarket, for instance, or would he prove to be too grumpy?
I think we'll try and sort of stick to horsey things, or anyway at the moment. I can't really imagine him opening a supermarket.
He's still a celebrity, though, is he?
I think he is, yeah. I mean, I've had millions of letters and the telephone's never stopped going since he retired. And I don't think people will forget him very easily.
Desi's already been booked to open a new stand at Nottingham Racecourse. Meanwhile, membership of his fan club, the only one of its type, is soaring. Terry Lloyd, ITN, Leicestershire.
And that's the news tonight from the Weekend News team. Good evening.
New drama on ITV. 70 years ago, Ireland was empire.
I will not only coerce them, I will beat them into the ground.
No, the British will never accept a republic.
This is your first chance of having a treaty with the people.
It's a typical piece of Lloyd George chicanery.
Let's continue the war and have no truck with negotiation.
We don't want to go to war again. I don't believe we can win it.
The true story of the treaty, Wednesday at 9 on ITV.
Good evening. It's going to be dry with light winds for most of the coming week, but the same area of high pressure will also bring us frost and fog. Some of it fairly dense, I think you'll find, so difficult conditions on the roads. But once the fog is finally cleared, most of us can look forward to some wintry sunshine, I think, during the next few days. Let's come back to tonight's weather, though. Some of the fog this afternoon never really cleared at all, and it's already becoming much more widespread and really quite dense in places, so difficult conditions on the roads. The clouds just about thick enough in one or two places out in the east to produce a spot or two of drizzle. Really no more than that, but that's all you need when roads are already close to freezing. There will be some icy patches around, so a difficult night on the roads. The temperatures tonight, well, quite variable. Where there is a patch of cloud around, that will help to keep temperatures a degree or two above freezing. But the breaks here and there, and I think most of us at risk of a frost, could be down around -2, -3 in quite a few places by the end of the night. So on to tomorrow then. Not a lot changing during the morning, really. The fog will linger well into the morning, so the morning rush hour looks like being fairly difficult. There's some patches of thicker cloud around, but most places brightening up gradually during the day. The fog will linger here and there, but most of us can expect a little bit of wintry sunshine. Temperatures struggling up to around 5 or 6 at best. 6 is about 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Light winds, of course, for us all. That's it then. Good night.
Good evening. High pressure now covering most of Britain means that the weather is expected to stay pretty much the same for the rest of the week. First tonight. It'll stay dry with frost in places, and patchy cloud may help to hold temperatures close to freezing in many parts of the north and east. Although clear skies in other areas will quickly lead to freezing fog and temperatures as low as -2 Celsius. The fog and ice may be slow to clear in the morning and may well last throughout the day, but generally it'll be dry with some sunshine. During the afternoon, those sunny spells will help temperatures to reach a maximum of 6 Celsius, but where fog lingers, it might not get much above 1 or 2 Celsius. As for the outlook, there'll be a good deal of dry weather and wintry sunshine during the day, with a high risk of fog and frost overnight. I leave you with the summary.
Now on London Weekend Television in stereo, The South Bank Show.